In this unit, we will discuss what we mean by disability. Upon completion of this unit, you shall be able to do the following. Give reason why widening accessibility is important. Give definitions of disability. We will analyze some common impairment and disability groups. Describe the difference between social and medical models of disability. Describe some assistive technologies for people with impairments. Explain how interaction designers might widen the accessibility of their product to address the requirements of people in each of the main impairment groups. The term accessibility normally refers to the degree to which an interactive product is usable by disabled people. It should be noted that one survey found that a significant proportion of the adult UK population, about 14%, is disabled. So widening accessibility to include disabled people might involve a considerable increase in the number of people who can use a particular product. Designing for accessibility will take into account the requirements for disabled people, which is likely to be more accessible and useful for non-disabled users. What do we mean by the term disability? Disability groups and other organizations may have their own definitions of disability. Two definitions are presented here. One is developed for the Disability Discrimination Act, DDA, and the second, from the World Health Organization, WHO. The DDA sets out the circumstances under which a person is disabled, and these are as follows. They have a mental or physical impairment. The impairment has an adverse effect on their ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. The adverse effect is substantial and long-term. This means that it has lasted for 12 months, or is likely to last for more than 12 months, or for the rest of the person's life. However, the WHO commissioned a classification system for disability, and these are as follows. Impairment. That is, any loss or abnormality of psychological structure. Disability. Meaning that any restriction or lack of ability resulting from an impairment to perform an activity like a normal human being. Handicap, which is the disability that limits or prevents the fulfillment of a role that is normal. You may wish to click on the attachment at the top right of the screen to view in more details what does it mean to be disabled. In defining normal day-to-day activities, the definition of disability states that at least one of the following areas must be badly affected. There are two central models of disability. The social model. It describes disability as all the things that impose restrictions on disabled people. These are ranged from individual prejudice to institutional discrimination. Also, from inaccessible public buildings to unusable transport systems. As well as from segregated education to excluding work arrangements, and so on. The medical or individual model. It locates the problem of disability within the individual. It also sees the causes of this problem as stemming from the functional limitations or psychological losses which are assumed to arise from disability. For more information, you may wish to click on the attachment above, found at the top right of the screen. The language that we use to talk about disability is quite problematic. The table shown illustrates the deprecated and preferred disability-related terms. The definition of these two terms are described. To experience disability implies being someone who is hearing impaired in a hearing world, or even being one who experiences dyslexia problems. You may wish to view a short case study describing the experiences of a hearing-impaired person in higher education in the attachment above at the top right of the screen. When discussing visually impaired people, it is important to distinguish between partially sighted people, that is, people having low vision, and people with no useful vision, which is called blindness. This distinction is important because these two groups interact with information and devices in very different ways. Visual impairments can be caused by many different conditions. Some conditions are associated with aging, while others are congenital, that is, present at birth. Different visual impairments have different effects on a person's vision. Assistive technologies for the blind and partially sighted. Blind people access computer output using a combination of software and hardware that present the visual contents of the screen in another form, that is, in synthesized speech. A screen reader monitors the information sent from the computer to the screen. It passes this information to a speech synthesizer. The main advantage of using a speech synthesizer with a screen reader is that it is cheap and often come as standard with new computers. As well as presenting the information on the screen, screen readers also provide additional functionality to allow the user to interact with the information. For example, screen readers may have commands for pausing or repeating the speech and echoing back keyboard input. The user may be able to control the amount of information that is read, for example, a paragraph, a line, a word, or a character at a time. The user can also move the focus backwards and forwards in the text. He may also be able to control the rate and pitch of the speech and to choose between different voices. Braille displays are also driven by screen reader software. Such displays are used in conjunction with a keyboard provided with a computer so that the user can easily access both. There are models to suit both laptop and desktop machines. Partial sight is caused by a range of eye conditions which affect vision in different ways. This means that partially sighted people have a range of different needs for accessing the output of a computer. Partially sighted people may require particular computer display settings to optimize their ability to see the screen. For example, some people find that particular color combinations for text and background are easier to see. Obviously, blind people cannot read visual labels and hence cannot use touch screens and also cannot use pointing devices, such as joysticks. One option used on many public service devices, such as banks' ATMs, is to provide Braille labels. Most blind people learn to read small amounts of Braille and may have sufficient knowledge to read these labels. However, in order to make an interactive device accessible to blind people, output should not be purely visual. Audio alternatives should be possible. The requirements of partially sighted people will vary depending on the individual person's needs and abilities, as they may require the ability to operate via keyboard or to magnify with assistive technology. Partially sighted people can access the audio output of a device or system, whether this be the voice of a caller on a mobile phone, a pre-recorded information message, or music played on a CD player. When discussing deafness, it is important to distinguish between people with severe or profound deafness and people who are hard of hearing. Profoundly deaf people do not generally use hearing aids as they provide no benefit. Some hard of hearing people use hearing aids to reduce the effects of the impairment. Hearing aids can allow people to access sound, but the sound is unlikely to be the same quality as can be heard with non-impaired hearing. Some deaf people, for example, those who have been profoundly deaf since birth, use sign language as their primary or only language and may not read or write English or other spoken languages. In general, people who have become deaf later in life do not require any specific assistive technology in order to use a computer effectively. Deaf people can access visual output and can use a mouse. Severely deaf people may change their computer settings so that it provides alternatives to audio, alerts, etc. using screen flashes. Hearing aid users may connect their aid to the computer speakers or an amplifier in order to hear audio output better. People who are dependent on sign language and who have never read have different needs. Provision of a signing avatar can be made. They might need the provision of a signing avatar, which is a software that creates an animated sign language interpreter.